So welcome back to Unit 6, Module 28, Operant Conditioning's Applications and Comparison to Classical Conditioning. This is a very short module with only 2 learning targets. The first being able to understand how we can apply operant conditioning to different areas of life. And the second one being able to distinguish between operant and classical conditioning. So 2 simple learning targets. There are many different ways we can apply operant conditioning targets in our lives, whether it's school, sports, work, home, for self-improvement, or even to manage our stress. And we're going to go over some of those. So at school or whatever educational sort of environment you're in, things like technology helps. Online adaptive quizzes that give you immediate feedback and sort of meet you right where you are in terms of whatever subject you're learning. They can be really helpful. Students receive reinforcement for correct understanding, and that can be really motivating and help students learn, giving them small successes, and building upon that can help students grow in their learning. In terms of sports, there are many ways. The key to shaping behavior and athletic performance as elsewhere is first reinforcing those small successes and then gradually increasing the challenge. Very true in the sport that's shown right here. I played soccer all my life and actually coached soccer as an adult, coached younger children. And, letting kids see small successes is really key to helping them build upon their skills and becoming more successful within athletics. How do operant conditioning principles underlie superstitions? Well, like in sports, that happens often. It happened to me as well, even when I used to play soccer. For example, if a baseball or softball player gets a hit, or say a home run after they tap the plate with a bat, he or she may be more likely to do it again because in their brain it's connected, right? I tapped home plate with my bat before I swung and got a home run. So maybe if I tap the plate again, I'm gonna get a home run again. Over time, the player may experience partial reinforcement for what becomes a superstitious behavior. I had this happen. It would be like I had to tie my shoes in a certain way. I had to wear my socks in a certain way, inside out. I think at one point I did, because I thought that if I wear my socks inside out, it would help me have a better soccer game. So that's how those superstitions develop in sports. At work, it's important for employers to remember that rewards are most likely to increase productivity if the desired performance is both well-defined and achievable. This is important. Like if you're a company that's selling something and you have sales goals, it's important for the goals to be achievable and defined. Like you can't make the sales goals like so far, beyond what any salesperson could ever achieve, or there won't be motivation and productivity will actually decline, right? Because if you want to achieve that desired result, you have to give little small, gradually increase the desired performance over time. And what the desired performance over time has to be defined really well. In terms of parenting, there's so many applications of operant conditioning. For example, when parents say things like, get ready for bed, or no, you can't have that candy, and then their child protests, is defiant, argues, whines, cries, screams, whatever, and then the parent gives in about bedtime or gives in about the candy in the grocery store line or something like that, that's actually reinforcing those behaviors that the parent doesn't want. The defiance, the arguing, the crying, all those things are actually being reinforced if you eventually give in. Some tips for parents: give children attention and other reinforcement when they're behaving well. This is simply the concept of catch them being good. If you have a child who is waiting patiently or doing what they're supposed to be doing, reinforce that behavior. Target the specific behavior, reinforce it, and then you can watch it increase. Really be careful with punishment. Punishment for kids who are defiant can backfire, actually. Try not to yell or ever hit your children in terms of punishment. Explain the misbehavior. If you must use punishment, explain the misbehavior and take it, if you're, removing some sort of privilege like an iPad or a misused toy, make sure that the child understands why that punishment is occurring. Make sure it's connected to the behavior. Self-improvement. There are so many ways we can use operant conditioning principles to improve ourselves. So To build upon your self-control, you need to reinforce your own desired behaviors and extinguish the undesired ones. So I love this cartoon. I wrote another 500 words. Can I have another cookie? I also do some writing, and this is a good technique to use. Like, oh, if I just get through this chapter, I can reward myself with something, right? So we need to use, it's also called the Premack principle. It's like, if you get done with this, what you're supposed to be doing, then you can reward yourself with something afterward. You can reinforce your own behavior. Lots of different ways we can do this with so many different areas we want to improve within ourselves. So 5 steps towards self-control. State a realistic goal in measurable terms and announce it. Tell other people that this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna reach this goal. Make sure you tell other people, because that'll hold you a little bit accountable for what you're doing. Decide how, when, and where you will work toward your goal. Monitor how often you engage in your desired behavior. Make sure you're keeping track of it. Reinforce the desired behavior, whether it's whatever it is that's reinforcing to you. What's reinforcing to one is not reinforcing to someone else. So remember that. You have to figure out what's reinforcing to yourself. And then once you are, achieve that, reduce the rewards gradually. How can we manage stress? Well, there's some evidence of a technique called biofeedback in helping to reduce stress. And biofeedback is a system for electronically recording, amplifying, and feeding back information regarding a subtle physiological state, such as blood pressure or muscle tension. And there's some evidence that it can work, that when we have feedback about our bodily responses, we can sometimes change those responses. There's also some, and this originally was found out by researcher Neil Miller in rats, and then later research revealed that some paralyzed humans could also even learn to control their blood pressure. So here's an example of a biofeedback system, which is recording tension in the forehead of muscles of a headache sufferer. So while there is evidence for, the success of biofeedback after some time, the studies later showed that some of the initial claims for how effective it could be were a little bit overblown, and that it really does work best for things like tension headaches. So how are classical and operant conditioning similar and different? Well, both of them, first of all, are just forms of associative learning. That's what you really need to understand. And then here, I'm not going to read all of these. I'm going to let this table up here for a minute or so you can really look at it and see the difference and read them yourself. So as you can see, there are, quite a few differences that you need to understand between classical and operant conditioning. This is a great table to check out those differences. So we are already to our reviewing of the learning targets. So what are some ways to apply operant conditioning to your life, basically? Teachers can use shaping techniques to guide students' behaviors, and they can use interactive media to give immediate feedback. In sports, coaches can build upon player skills and self-confidence by reinforcing small improvements. Managers can boost productivity and morale by rewarding well-defined and achievable behaviors. And parents can reinforce desired behaviors, not undesirable ones. How are operant conditioning and classical conditioning, this is the wrong one. Discuss ways to apply operant conditioning. We're still doing that. We can shape our own behavior. Really, really important one that I almost forgot. We can shape our own behaviors by stating our goals, monitoring the frequency of desired behaviors, reinforcing desired behaviors, and gradually reducing rewards as behaviors become habitual. We can learn from our bodily responses, like how our body's reacting, and biofeedback is one method of that. Now here's the one on distinguishing between operant and classical conditioning. In operant conditioning, an organism learns associations between its own behavior and resulting events. This form of conditioning involves operant behavior, whereas in classical conditioning, the organism forms associations between stimuli, events it does not control. This form of conditioning involves respondent behavior. Okay, and we are already to the end. Thank you for listening and take care.